Well, hello everyone. I hope you're doing well. Glad that you can make it. Today I'm gonna talk about drink of gods. So I'm gonna go all the way back to the Mayans and Aztecs and Olmecs. How they turned the cacao seed into a drink and how it was made for the gods and a sacred fruit. I will have to put a disclaimer. When I started this topic, I thought it would be more simpler, but it is very heavy on historical, cultural, and economic impacts. So instead of focusing in one aspect, I decided to lightly touch upon the whole history of chocolate. To make it easier to follow, I will be writing in this area certain names that are either hard to write or pronounce. That way, I've been in your seat before. It is stressful. You don't have to take notes as long as you enjoy it and have fun with me. So, first things first, we have to put into context what even is a cacao tree. So, cacao is where we get chocolate from. Originally, cacao was it grew in South America. In this area, you will see the different type of cacaos, which I didn't know until I started researching and I was bombarded with different options. Obviously, each cacao has a different taste. However, since there are way too many for me to explain each one to you, we will be focusing on two cacao types, the criollo and the forastero, which I will be writing up here. Today's production map looks extremely different from the original roots of cacao due to exportation, transportation, trading, and different types of a lot of things. That's how we have so many flavors of chocolates and so many different types. The cacao tree is kind of picky on how to grow, the weather, the conditions it needs to. It needs to have a soil with high condensity of nitrogen. It has to have a very humid weather. It has to have a lot of rain, but not too much rain because then a fungus will start growing on it and eating at the fruit. And it also has to have enough sun, but still be in the shade and also have protection from wind. Due to that, this tree is not common in every part of the world. It can only be up to near the equator, where you can see this type of climate and protection too. Now, the difference between forastero and criollo is very apparent. Criollo is 10 times more sensitive than forastero. Criollo, even if you have the conditions I mentioned, it is a hard work to keep it alive and producing. The difference in criollo, it's also, as you can see here, a mortar. Here they call it the diversity area, as it has a higher condensation of different types of cacao. But as further up you go, the rarer it becomes and the more sensitive and easier to kill the tree becomes. Now, cacao itself. Like I said, there's two very different types of cacao I'm going to talk about. The criollo, which is more sensitive, and it is less bitter than forastero. It is less bitter and 10 times more nutrient filled. It has a softer skin, a lot of protein, a lot of fat, and I will stress that it's less bitter than forastero later on. Why? In current day and age, forastero makes up to 80% of the production of chocolate, while criollo makes less than 5%. Here you can see a table on just how high in nutrients and minerals cacao is, which is very important because back then maybe these minerals were not easy to find. So this made this fruit very important and nutritious for them. And the left you see a cacao fruit opened up. I had to put that image in because in here they just put the already toasted seeds of the cacao. But over there, it's an entire fruit that grows on the tree. When they open it up, it has like the flesh, and inside are the seeds. So now that we know a bit more about the context of cacao trees and what cacao itself is, I'm gonna talk more about theobroma. Now, theobroma is a chemical similar to caffeine, but without the loss or impact of caffeine. Theobroma relaxes the blood vessels, making you have high energy and high mood, which is specifically found in theobroma trees, cacao trees. They have very different names, but we're gonna stick with theobroma, and I'm just gonna call it cacao trees. Now, as you saw the vast expansion of different cacao in different areas in which we grow, I didn't want to bombard you with information and touch upon each one, so I'm gonna focus just on the peninsula of Mexico, where we saw the criollo being the only type of cacao there in ancient times. And I'm also sticking to this area to talk about the Mayan culture and how they view the cacao and their religion and day-to-day life. Here in the map, it shows you the areas where the Mayan culture I'm gonna focus on. And in modern times, those areas in Yucatan, Campeche, Quintana Roo, Tabasco, and Chiapas, which if you've ever visited Mexico for tourist reasons, you might have heard of a few things of cacao there. Now, here's where my research started diverting. There's some very common misconceptions about Aztecs and Mayan being the same culture or having extremely similar practices, which is not quite correct. They were in fact close to one another, but they were not similar enough so you can throw them into like one single paper, which is where I ran into the problem that when explaining the sacred cacao, they expected the Aztecs and Mayans to be on the same. The first reason I ran into this problem is because in Aztecs, it was seen as sacred and mostly nobility and to be given to warriors after hard battles or do special ceremonies for the gods. It's even believed that they use blood and to make this drink. And so that was also believed for the Mayans, as in they're very close together originally. However, recent studies in an archaeological site appear to have found ceramic shards with traces of theobroma, which, if you recall, is only found in cacao trees. So when traces of theobroma appeared in the ceramics were not from noble origins or high class. They were also used as common household things. So there's where a shift in my research came. The cacao went from being sacred only for the gods and mighty warriors and nobility to being more of a common community-based drink. Now that we got that out of the way, we're gonna go into how the Mayans actually used it. Again, I do apologize if some of the pictures or information are confused with the Aztecs. It was hard to divide due to how combined they made it seem. And here, we can see it as a form of currency. And these are the trade routes the Mayans used to trade different things. They don't obviously have, like we have modern currency, which is like coins, gold, diamonds. Instead, they prefer to use more, I know this picture's a bit blurry, I'm sorry about that, more usable items, like cacao, which, like we saw, was very high in nutrients and very versatile. They also did cotton and day-to-day items. It was so important and valued that we have over there the god Ikchwak, which I'm going to write their name here. Ikchwak. Ikchwak can often be depicted in murals and ceramics found archaeologically, and he is described as white with black stripes, or, and depending on the era, brown with black stripes. He is the god of trading and merchants, in which merchants traveled with his pendant on them for protection. He became popular for cacao, and often referred as the cacao god, because cacao was one of the main trading currencies, which directly correlates them to Ikchwak. However, like any religion and any importance, things are not as simple as I would have preferred to have been when researching this. While researching Ikchwak, I came across 3 other gods. They all claim to be cacao gods, and the main ones. So that's where the family drama came in, correlating the gods. And this is why it's sometimes very difficult when you combine 2 different cultures into one, because even in just one culture in the Mayas, they have different opinions. So if you combine 2 cultures that they have different opinions, you get a lot of misinformation and combined facts. We have here Kukulkan, the god of the sun, or also known as the feathered snake, which you might have heard by a different name called Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl is from Aztec culture, and Kukulkan is from Mayan culture. The tradition for Kukulkan, it is rumored that he brought the cacao trees to humanity after their creation for them to be able to provide and be prosperous. For Ixcacao, is the one on top here. She is the goddess of chocolate, cacao, and compassionate, and in some places fertility even. So as the goddess of cacao, compassion, and fertility, you can see her used in several fertility rituals in which they use cacao, the cacao drink, as a component to, again, do the aroma, relax the veins, and connect to one another better. An aphrodisiac, to put it in better terms. And on the bottom here is where things get interesting, as you can see the separation of beliefs between Ikchwak and Hunkampu. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Hunkampu is actually the god of corn, maize. And the picture above here is depicted as him being the cacao tree. So we went from someone given the humanity cacao trees to one being the representation of cacao and fertility, to one being the literal tree that gave the cacao seeds to humanity. So I recommend, while researching, always check different sources, because there's never one single story to a tradition or religion. I'm gonna go write these names down so you guys can, because I know I was forgetting them every time I looked away from those names.
Would you mind using a black marker? Because
yeah.
I cannot see
were so greatly intertwined is because corn was also one of the main agricultural resources for them. So they got all of their nutrients from both cacao and corn, making them necessary for their survival. And here, I'm going to show you a bit more of the ceremonies that they used to give thanks to the earth and to the trees that made the cacao. On the top right, you can see a fertility ceremony, which shows each shell and chalk. Here I was also confused because last I told you it was ish cacao that was represented as fertility. However, in this mural, instead is shown a shell, each shell. And each shell is the goddess that represents femininity, life, and medicine. And Shak is the god of rain. And by correlation, agriculture, as in they needed prosperous rain to be able to farm their crops. In this mural, you can see them trading cacao beans for the ritual of fertility. Now, here in this side, you can see a modern ceremony. What I mean by modern ceremony is that the Mayans have taken the ceremony and try to pass it down by their heritage and to the next person. This particular ceremony is one involving ish cacao and Shak instead of ishel and Shak. As this one is not a fertility ceremony, but instead to promote goodwill for the trees. So to promote a good harvest, that's the word I was looking for. To promote a good harvest, they would pray and do offerings for Shak while giving thanks to Ish Cacao for them. I'm gonna play a video. I'm not gonna play it completely, just so you can see more about the ceremonies and how they're trying to keep these traditions alive nowadays. And as you can see, this was not only a religious compound for them, but also cultural. As you can hear how the woman says that this is what empowers them. This is what shows how she's ready to get married or not. How she builds strength, how she wants to carry children for them. Now, I'm going to build a bit more on how this process is created, as obviously in the video we didn't have enough time to see everything from scratch. So after the cacao fruit is pegged down, it is obviously opened and fermented. What this fermentation process entails, they do not put it in water and just let it rot. I think that would taste really gross. Instead, with the pulp that comes inside the fruit, they leave it on the cacao seed and put it on a vase and cover it. In that cover it, you leave it for 5 to 7 days until it starts gaining texture and drying. After the fermentation process, they leave it to rest on the sun so they can dry completely. Now, once the cacao is dried completely, which takes less than 5 days, then is where, as you see, you can crush it. Toast it first. I'm sorry, I skipped a step. That's when they toast it, and then they can grind it into the paste that we saw in the video. Now, as you see then, after grinding it into the paste, is when they pour that paste into hot water and mix it. There were different ways to mix this hot chocolate. As in ancient depictions and paintings and ceramics, it showed that a very important part of the hot chocolate for the ceremonies we're drinking in was to have a lot of foam in it. So to create this foam, and you see in the far right picture, The far right picture actually shows two methods. One is the pouring from base to base from a high distance, so when it clashes, it mixes together, creating that foam. Or if you see in what appears to be a handle, it's actually like a straw. It has a hole that leads to the bottom of the base, so in which you can blow bubbles into it. And when you blow bubbles into it is where you create the foam base. Now, there is also this handle that we see here, that is if you want to put a bit of more elbow grease into your foam. And we saw actually one of the shamans using that method in which you put the stick there and rub it together to make the loose parts shake and mix the entire thing. The more foam it creates, the better. And they did not add sugar back then, which is why it was also known as bitter water. As healthy as it was not sweet on the tongue. However, it was not as bitter as forastero. Because as we heard, criollo, it's a sweeter, more nutrient and more fruity. Chocolate tears describe it as a smoother type of chocolate nowadays. I don't know, I haven't tried criollo. Like I said, I don't go to plantations like that. Not only was it cultural and spiritual and religious to them, even going as far as currency, but it could also be used in medicine. How do you differentiate a drink that is made for medicine and a drink that is made for ceremonies? Simple. They didn't just drink the nutritious cacao bean. They also mixed it with several different herbs. One of these herbs which was common for curing inflammation was tlacosuchi. Tlacosuchi, they mixed tlacosuchi with the cacao beans, the cacao paste, and the corn, the maize, to make that paste and that drink to cure being fatigued, headaches, to improve mood, and cure, like I mentioned, inflammation. As we know that the chemical Theobroma relaxes the blood veins. Theobroma is also based on the Latin word meaning food of gods, which, hey, if a seed can cure all those illnesses, I would also be saying it's food of gods. It was then later, as it was more in-depth research, depending on which herbs you mixed it with, it can cure up to, it can make you produce more milk for women, for milk. It could also even be used in anemic patients, as it is mentioned, very high on fat and minerals. It was also very commonly used to cover the flavor of very strong medication. Since medication had a very strong and nasty flavor, they would use chocolate to cover that and put it in. Even nowadays, it's considered by world regulation to be a perfect non-toxic fruit to consume even while pregnant or in small children, as long as you don't consume it in excess. Now keep in mind, I'm not talking about today and date chocolate, or like I'm not telling you, hey, go stuff your mouth with Hershey's. I'm talking about the actual non-sugar processed cacao, like you said, like we saw, made by hand. Now, how this research was slowly provided is the Spaniard colonization. Now, I'm sorry. And the Spaniard colonization is where a lot of things changed. When the Spaniards came in and sadly took care of everything by killing them and stealing their goods, That's where they found the cacao seed and imported it back to Europe. Now, when it got to Europe, to the nobility, they did not enjoy the bitter taste. They did not appreciate that flavorful experience. And that's when they started adding honey and sugar to enhance the flavor and make it sweeter for them. Now, since this was a more exotic fruit, it was only left for upper nobility. So the nobles could enjoy the sweet and exotic taste of it. Now, as you can see in the upper right corner, you will see the title says slave trade. No, you did not read that wrong. Due to its increasing popularity, they decided that they were not producing it fast enough. So they grabbed slaves from Africa and brought them to South America to help with the plantations, as it was cheaper work and faster. Once they started mass producing these plants, that's when they started realizing that criollo was not a good thing to start traveling around. It would not survive. It was hard to even keep in its own environment. It would never make the trip back home. So that's where forastero came in. Forastero then was moved back to Africa, and it was planted all over the place, and it still causes issues today when you bring a new plant. Currently, it is the Ivory Coast and Ghana that are producing 2/3 of the cacao production. This, I will not go too in depth about this, but it's causing a lot of problems with child labor and underpaid labor. Not much was changed there. Now that they had access, due to the different colonies, to honey, sugar, and cacao, the prices went lower, and it was more available to the masses, and that's when it started to become common. However, as common as it was, it couldn't still be fully mass-produced, as it would be rotten, or it couldn't travel very far distances. So, a scientific person created a special apparatus that was like a hydraulic press that it would turn the viscous consistency into powder. And that's how you separated the cacao liquor, the cacao powder, and the cacao butter. Once those were separated, you could sell the cacao powder and cacao butter separately and faster without it fermenting or rotting in the long travels. And that was a whole game changer as it was spread around the world. It became less of an extravagant fruit and more as a sweet for desserts. And it slowly lost its original meaning. Which brings us to today. It looks very different than it used to. What started as a sacred fruit used by medicine and ceremonies really got changed when the Spanish colonized the place. And then it got transported into something to drive the economy, something that you can sell quick and fast. Which brings us to today. After being spread around the world, it slowly started evolving and changing flavors and changing shapes into chocolate bars. And chocolate, its flavor, wasn't the only thing it changed. As you saw, some people are still trying to keep the ceremonies alive traditionally, but there's also people who's taken those ceremonies and meanings and changed it into something more modern. Now, these modern ceremonies have connected to meditation and yoga. As the original ceremonies, they believed that by drinking cacao, they could have a deeper connection to God and earth and their spirit, they have taken these ideas and put it in a modern setting. Here I have a link to one of the most popular pages where you can access and research. I will have to disclaim these. It's an influencer, and I do not recommend buying any products unless you know for certain you do your research and everything in between. This is simply one of the many examples in how this ceremony was conceived. Again, I did not pick her for any academic or personal reasons. It was just one of the many examples because, as you see, if I open this link, it shows many different things instead of a specific one. It shows how the recipe changed for their specific one. Okay. Here it shows the different ingredients she uses for this new adaptation of the original cacao ceremony. She uses 4 tablespoons of chopped ceremonial cacao. Now what that means is, if you remember our old video, the creators of the original paste packed their cacao boxes and shipped them so people could make it home. So this is what she means by ceremonial cacao. And she honestly, to each page has their own different tips. She decides to add rose tea, sweetener, and a pinch of Himalayan salt. So again, I chose it just because I thought it was one of the best examples to use. As not only does she refer to a healthy version of the cacao, she also provides how she meditates and how she thinks and places herself. So as you can see, it wasn't only the flavor that changed, it wasn't only the packaging that changed, but also the significance and how we correlate ourselves with cacao and chocolate. Here is just a few of the links that I thought it was like the more important ones that helped me through this research. And if you scan that QR code, it is actually a quick tutorial on how to make it at home without having to buy the big blocks. If you just buy the already fermented and dried cacao seeds, it shows you how to do it at home. Thank you very much. I will be open to questions.
Any questions, anyone?
None at all? I hope that means I explained it very well and not very badly that you don't have questions.
Okay, and maybe I was out while you were talking about it, but is there a pink chocolate?
Pink chocolate, it is with criollo. Pink chocolate is an anomaly of criollo. As
So
criollo
is it
is
normal
very-
thing? It's not something that is made in the lab? It's a real cocoa?
really depends how pink are we talking, because the pinker that it is, the more messed around with it is. As criollo is actually originally red. It's a very red fruit, and open, due to the process of it, due to being red, it slowly dissolves into a more pinker color.
So have you guys seen pink chocolate?
No, not natural.
There is a pink chocolate that is natural. That's why I asked. Yeah. Yes. Ask her. No,
I'm
I'm
asking what you're referring to. Like,
Pink.
is it what's
pink
known as
in
green
color.
chocolate, or is it something else?
No, it's a pink chocolate.
No, I mean, like, there is one that I know that's pink color, but I don't know if it's the same thing as every
Yeah. It's,
other. Because that one is not connected naturally, as far as I know. I think it's a secret.
are you sure though? That's why I asked about it.
Because it's
The real pink
I think it's
chocolate is
the-
very, very expensive.
the one I think it's Forastero.
Yeah,
is that,
talk to her then.
is that
Because she's the expert of chocolate, that's
do
not.
you know that's
Sorry, I can't hear you from back there. Could you mind repeating your question?
do you know if there is that sort of factory made treatment of Forastero that makes it pink?
Of course, there's depending on which factory you go, there is obviously pink colorants. Like if you see that pastel, beautiful pink with roses on it, it is factory made. Like I said, the original Criollo is red, and due to the process of being dried, pasted, and everything, it turns a lighter shade of red, which we know as pink. So that's where it becomes a pinker color, and that's the expensive chocolate because it's Criollo, not because of it's pink. Criollo in itself is very expensive. If you're talking about like the strawberry Hershey's pink bars, then no, that's colorant and like other resources. Now I know you had a. Does that answer your question?
Well, I'm pretty sure I saw that it wasn't with dyes specifically, but it was colored by chemicals. So it turned red, but it wasn't made red by dyes.
Are you talking about the Criollo cacao or the or the chocolate?
It was. I'm pretty sure it was just regular, or the.
Yeah, that depends on the factory that is making these chocolates. Some use chemicals, others use color dyes, and so on and so forth. I didn't research very. I wanted to see Willy Wonka, but I was running out of time, so I focused more on the natural version as much as I wanted to, see other like
Well,
Hershey's
there are
and
synthetic
Kisses.
versions. I'm sure that white chocolate would be added several drops of dye to turn it pink, but it's not natural. You see what I mean? It's like white chocolate is not very natural.
Well, I was thinking that because of the behavior of some of the chemicals in the chocolate itself. The composition.
Yeah.
So,
Any other questions?
yeah.
Yep.
So you said it was the Aztecs who gave this drink to warriors when they came back.
Yes.
You said it was mixed with blood. Do you know why, or what was the significance behind that?
Funnily enough, in this video, it tries to explain it, but again, it's a lot of conjecture. Apparently, archaeology in Mexico is kind of iffy, as some events, when painted, were either exaggerated. But it was said for it to be given a reddish tint to the chocolate.
Oh, so it was just for the coloring?
For the coloring, and I didn't research much into the Aztec, but it could have been like a sacrifice to the god of sun. Like they're taking that fruit that was given to them and putting their own blood as a thank you for them.
Do you know what kind of blood it was?
Their blood?
Like,
Human.
well, no, but like there's in other parts of the world they use menstrual blood to.
No, it was cut. It was cut
okay.
for them, for their blood from warriors. Yeah.
Oh, from the warriors themselves?
Yes.
Oh, so they mix their own blood with the drink.
Correct.
And then drink.
How did they know that this is human blood? Because, okay, so a lot of animals have, all animals have blood, but human blood has this specific protein that is called myoglobin. And myoglobin leaves the traces in a lot of, whatever you touch it, because it's protein, it leaves a trace on it. And the more the person was in pain, the more there was suffering associated with blood being let, the higher percentage of myoglobin they are. And they actually could be found in human heart. And this is one of the ways that archaeologists know that humans were consumed, because of the presence of myoglobin, see? So that's why it's problematic in Mesoamerica, because a lot of vessels didn't survive. So isotope analysis and different types of chemical analysis were not possible.
Yeah.
So I
no,
just wanted to-
guys.
Sorry.
You had a question?
If I wanted to find that seed, the Criollo, what stores would you recommend to find it?
I'm not, like I said, I'm not recommending any stores unless you do your research in it, because as you saw on the page, obviously a lot of influencers are out there and it's becoming a bit more popular. So there's a lot of information. I would do your research and like visit places if you wanted to buy that chocolate. And I saw a question over here.
Yes. So, do you know if they also had people that they captured during wars, for example, sacrifice also used for the sacrifices also using their blood for the drinks?
No, it was a sacred ceremony. You wouldn't use slaves for your sacred ceremonies. You used valued warriors.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant. Instead of
Do we know that for sure though?
due to what little remains of archaeology that they found was depictions of warriors, and the depictions of slaves were after they invaded other nations. That's the only depictions of slaves that we saw.
Yeah, so I meant like captured warriors from other nations.
If it's not your warriors, they're not warriors. A defeated warrior is not better than your undefeated warriors, you know?
In terms of the history of the cacao trade, how were they being transported? Was cacao also transported in the same ships as slaves? And then if so, what were the conditions of the cacao since it was so like expendable, or not expendable, but it would waste quickly? How would they ship it if they were on the same boat?
So that's where the they were first like, the easiest way to transport the cacao would be to ferment it first, then dry it, and those dry beans is like what you can buy at different stores, and then it's easier to move around. As for the conditions of slave ships, I'm sure you've seen it in other classes. They were not pleasant enough for me to talk in a presentation about chocolate, which, yeah.
I just thought it was really interesting too how one of the, I guess, like types of cacao or whatever, it's called criollo because like criollo, like doesn't that also mean like a person who is fully of Spanish origin and was used to like discern between like who was
Yes.
indigenous or mestizo and who was fully a Spaniard?
So criollo actually means pure origin. So this one's called criollo because again, they couldn't move it from the original spot.
But it's interesting how like throughout all of this, like they have taken, even the name has changed. I don't know.
No, it is fascinating. Like I said, I wish I could have like touched in everything, but since there was so much information, I just had to gather as much as possible for you to see here. Did I see a question over this side? I'm
Okay,
imagining.
if there are no more questions, let's give her a hand.